everybody? Welcome to Coffee Hour with Paul. My name is Paul Abernathy. What day is it? What day is it? It's hump day. We're halfway through the hump. We're at the peak of our life's sinusoidal wave. We're getting ready to go down towards the end of the week, but we're at our peak. I understand that there's some folks out there who are getting ready to take their electrical exam today. Again, think here, positive thoughts. Okay, positive thoughts. It's not about whether you're going to pass. It's what's the record. You're going to set that record today. You're going to pass it, and your life is going to change because whether you believe it or not, life is much better as an electrician after you get your license than it is before you get your license. Okay, life starts to get better. You start to learn more. You start to now have a little authority. You start to absorb the knowledge, and you get to spread it with other people, and you get to be responsible for your actions as a licensed electrician. And it's a beautiful thing. So welcome to Coffee Hour, everybody. If you're an apprentice out there, you're a journeyman out there, you should be striving to be a master or whatever the max is in your state. If you're a master electrician out there and you want to push your skills, and you should think about the CMECP program, take your game to the next level and then be very proud of it if you achieve it. Share it with everybody. Put it on everything. Wear your pin with pride, okay? Keep your CMECP coin right there to show it. Again, people say, well, I don't brag. It's not bragging if you've achieved it, my friend. It's pride. There's a difference, okay? So everybody that doesn't will always say it's bragging. That's because they ain't got it. That's because they hadn't achieved it. Man, it's easy to talk smack if you hadn't achieved it, right? Okay, and then there's people that say, well, those that are humble don't talk about it or brag about their achievements. Yeah, those are the some bitches that are in the bread line. Okay, if you've done it, you've achieved it, don't be afraid to toot your own horn because ain't nobody else out there looking to toot your own horn in this world. Okay, you toot your horn, you be very proud of what you've achieved. Anybody else says, oh, you don't have to talk your own stuff, screw them. Okay, they ain't about them, it's about you. It's about you and your family and making things better for you and get a thicker skin and stop worrying about what other people think. All right, hey, today we're going to be getting into part 2, talking about feeders. We already did part 1 yesterday. Hopefully you go back and watch that if you did not watch it. Today we're going to be talking about feeders. So looking at a different feeder panel. Okay, so we're going to hammer these things home. That's why we're doing it here. We want to make sure we answer all of your questions on feeders. So if you've got any questions about Article 215, anything about the calculation in 220, please bring them. Now, let me tell you right now, I did forget to size the neutral. I was so busy and we got overtime. I didn't size the neutral on yesterday's. Y'all saw what it was, and we had a little bit of a discussion where I thought that the lesson, and it had an error in there, and I knew that was there, but that was part of the discussion. It didn't change the size or anything, so it wasn't a big deal, but it allowed us to have talking points. That's important. That's why I leave them in there. Now, today, we're going to be doing a different feeder, but I forgot to do the minimum size neutral from yesterday's lesson. So we're going to knock that out of the way first and show you how to go look at 250.24 and then ultimately go to 250.102C and show you the minimum size. Now remember, with neutrals, you still have to do a calculation. You still do 220.61. You still have to size that neutral for the maximum of the imbalance load. Once you do all that, and we did that with our calculation yesterday. That was our load. Now we size conductors accordingly, okay? But there is a minimum size requirement in the National Electrical Code. So we're going to kind of go look at that for that neutral. Now, if you're using an SE cable, then don't worry, like an SER, then it already takes care of that itself. The neutral cannot be more than 2 sizes smaller than the ungrounded conductors. And basically, since you're using a cable like that that has a leg A and leg B, the neutral's carrying the maximum imbalance, it's typically going to be smaller. It's not like you would run into a commercial application where you may have something with a situation where you have harmonics and things like that, which are going to affect the size of the neutral or amount of current that it can carry. Not really the issue in a residential application. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So if you're buying SER cable, the manufacturers already take care of this for you. But we still need to know how to do it in case you maybe are running PVC or something, that type of thing. So we'll look at all that. All right. Let's see here. Before I get started, I want to tell you that I live vicariously through all of you, all of our students that submit things to us and join us. So do me a favor. in the comments, no matter what platform you're on, whether you're on our Facebook pages, LinkedIn pages, or YouTube pages, or even over on the Fast Tracks Tube. Do me a favor. Let me know who you are, where you're from, what you got going on. Do you have any questions? Feel free to post them. Try to stay germane to the topic. If you have questions about 215, if you have questions about 225, if you have questions about the calculations in 220, please feel free to ask them. Very germane. If you have a topic that is way out there and you're like, ooh, I couldn't wait to come to Coffee Hour to ask a question about something that's totally obscure to what we're talking about, do me a favor. Go to paulabernathy.com and use the portal to submit your question, and we will answer it on an upcoming Coffee Hour or in a podcast, that type of thing. But we want to try to stay on topic, okay? So maybe Friday we'll do open floor and let you ask any question you want. But really, we're talking feeders today. We're talking feeder calculations, all those type of things. So let's kind of keep it germane to the topic if we can. All right, let's go do some shout outs real quick over on the folks that joined us. Paul, good morning down in Houston. Paul is busy working today, putting up a sign. He's also behind the scenes over on TikTok. So if I haven't told you, we are back to streaming behind the scenes on TikTok, usually a little bit before the live show starts. I'm on TikTok, and so it just streams in the background. So if you want to join us behind the scenes, and really all you're going to see is half of my face in this, and we have a mixer board and mics and all that stuff. So if that's your kind of thing, join us behind the scenes over on TikTok. Okay, again, Master the NEC on all platforms. Let's see, what's up, Adam? Thank you, Adam. I am doing well today. The wife knew who I was this morning. That's always a great thing. And it's raining like cats and dogs here in Virginia. So I almost didn't have a show this morning. The signal we had no signal. It was raining so hard. So Starlink is great unless it's a freaking monsoon, and then it just doesn't work that well. Also, I have the fiber connection right outside the wall here. We just don't know when they're going to call us to install it in here. I have no idea. Okay, so things should get better, and we ought to be able to have multiple cameras once we get that fiber connection. Well, fingers crossed. We don't know when it's going to come. Let's see here. Let's see. Let me get past my little quotes this morning. What's up, Tom? Good morning. Glad to have you here. CMECP in the house. There you go, Adam. Hump Day. That's what I'm talking about. Seattle or Skiattle. I still don't know how to pronounce that. Okay. Still don't know. Welcome to the show. What's up, Erie? Welcome to the show. As always, Fast Track student, working diligently, I hope, in your program. What's up, Greg? What is up? Glad to have you here. Ohio in the house. Okay. What's up, David? Another CMEC piece is blessed us with their presence. Thank you, sir. Glad to have you here. Adam, best of luck in all taking exams today. Go knock it out the park. Yes, we know some folks are taking exams today. Again, sometimes people ask me, I just got a call the other day from a guy who did this course. I think it was on YouTube, a course or something, and he's failed it twice. And he's reaching out to me, and he's sounds very destitute. And I said, look, yeah, he took advantage of our discount that we had for the 2023 program, but he just wanted to talk to me. He was surprised that he got me on the phone. I don't know why more people are surprised, because I try to answer the phone, even though we have Jeff and we have what's called that virtual phone system where Jeff or Darlene or anybody can answer. I answer probably 99% of the time, and I will always do that. One, because usually I can answer the questions quicker, so I don't take up their time quicker, and I enjoy talking to people. As you can tell, I'm a talker. All right, so I try to stay engaged with as many people as possible, but he was struggling, and I told him, relax. You're going to get it. Relax. Doesn't matter what your score is. Doesn't matter how many times it took you. Once you get it, you got it, so relax. He says that he stresses out during exams. I said, calm down. And I referred him to the 3-wave method, so that he can watch that 3-wave method. And he says that will help him. So again, he's working diligently in the program. So he just got started in it. So I'm here for you. Remember, we have what's called the Interact feature, which you can ask questions in the Fast Tracks Interact as well. What's up, Peter? Glad to have you here. I see you, Sparky Forever. I see you in the house.
Woo, woo, woo,
what we got?
Big dog.
Good morning, Red Dog. Red Dog, the template for the license plate thing is scheduled to come in Thursday, tomorrow. So that's good news. So once we get figured out the template, we'll be good to go. Let's see here. Oops, hold on here. Show here. Isn't the minimum feeder neutral 215 and 250? We're going to be looking at all that stuff today, David. So we'll definitely be looking at it. But we're also got to remember some of the other requirements that we have to look at as well. So we'll cover all of those things. Let's see here. Rob, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you here as well. And yeah, so I did forget to do that neutral calculation yesterday at the end, and that's okay because again, it was so small, and we know that most of the feeder cables that you're going to buy is already going to have a more than adequately sized neutral. So again, I just ran out of time. It was over an hour, and I was anxious to get you folks going here. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Anselmo. Glad to have you here. Good morning, Marlon. Glad to have you here as well. Got Code Nerds going on. What's up, Joseph from up in New Jersey area? Good morning, Manny. We're in the green Code Nerd hoodie. That's what I'm talking about. Available over on fasttracksystem.com/shop, SHOP. Thank you for sporting that for us. What's up, Eddie? Eddie, hopefully you're diligently back in the program as well. What's up, Brandon? Glad to have you here, Brandon. Brandon nailed his master's exam out there in Texas. Way to go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Let's see here. What's up, Lewis? Link for the Masters Challenge coin. I can't do a link during the show, but it's over on our website. Let's see here. Maybe I can give you a link. Here, let me go. Let me see here. All right, let me just let's see here. Paul's doing custom requests today. So let's see here. You go to our store, and which one? Well, you say Electrician Master Coin. Okay, well that would be under the engraved products. And let's see here. Let's find. There was a bunch of them over here. All right, so here's the master one. All right. Look, I'm doing requests today. I'm doing requests. There we go. All right. There it is. There's the web address. Basically, just go to that address right there. But it's easy to find. Just go to fasttracksystem.com. You'll see something that says Our Store in the navigation. Click on Our Store and just go down to the engraved products, and that's where you'll find it. Okay. All right, where are we at here? Do you want to do some shout outs? So keep the shout outs going. Thomas stresses out during exams. Imagine having Paul as your proctor. So Tom did very well. He did our proctored exam for the CMECP, recorded, kept on file for all posterity, and did a great job. Tom, if you were nervous, sure did not seem like it. You nailed it. You did a great job. A lot of people really, I tell you, one of the things about stressing out in exams, if those that have done exams before, I got the wrong glasses on, folks. You wonder why I couldn't see anything. I didn't have my computer glasses on. There we go. One of the things that people stress out about is they sit there and they're in this cubicle, right? They're in this freaking cubicle and they stress out. We got some questions over. Good morning, Bearded Inspector over on TikTok. You could join us live over here at fasttrackstube.com/coffee hour. Okay. Chime in, chat with us over here. The Bearded Inspectors over on TikTok. He loves that TikTok. Got to get him on these other platforms. What's up, Haas? But some people go into exams and they just literally freeze up. I don't know if it's the sterile environment, the fact that they know people are watching them, that there are other people around there, and you got to be quiet like a library. I say hell with that. Go in there and raise hell. I'm just saying, get in there and go, whoop, whoop, you know? All right, don't do that. Get you kicked out. You don't want to do that. What's up, Pedro? Welcome. Okay. Pedro's driving to work. Listen to us work. Remember, you can listen to us on our mobile app. If you haven't gotten the mobile app, what the hell is wrong with you, folks? It's free. You can get to our blogs. We have some great blogs. We have some interesting blogs. If you have never checked out the blogs, they're very much a learning blog. Now, every now and then you'll get a blog where it's more salesy. Come on, man. I'm trying to make a living here. But majority of the time, the blogs are very educational. So check out the blogs. Blogs are not dead. People are still reading these blogs, and we make it easy for you to do that from our mobile app. Get our mobile app. No, you don't go to the App Store. No, you don't go to Google App Store. You get it right from our website. It's all web-based. Come on. We ain't going to send you down to download any of that crap. What's up, David? Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Let me get past my posts. Eddie's back in it, studying hard in September. There you go, Eddie. Use the Fast Tracks Interact feature. And make sure you ask your questions. There is no dumb questions in our program. You definitely want to ask. If there's something you don't understand, ask the question. Same way here. No dumb questions here. Okay? Somebody gets all skanky in here, I will kick them out and ban them from all platforms. Okay? We're here to learn. This is a learning environment. Okay? We don't just talk exam prep here. Coffee hour is really to get you going. Also, let me put it this way. I'm here to answer any questions also that you may have on marketing. I'm here to answer any questions you may have on hiring and firing. I'm here to answer any questions you may have business related when it comes to your electrical contracting business. I've had them. I've ran them. People say, Paul, have you ever been out in the field and rustling in the mud? Absolutely. 20 plus years. I owned electrical contracting businesses in Virginia and in Texas. I've been in crawl spaces. I've been in attics. Okay. But I've also made mistakes, and I've learned from those mistakes in the electrical contracting business. What works, what doesn't work, what things to steer away from, first impressions, how to deal with customers. I've learned the hard way. Luckily, I had a brother who helped mold me early on. And so, again, I had my share of mentors. And then in the code world, I have been blessed to be under the wing of many great mentors. Even when I worked for NEMA, National Electrical Manufacturers Association. I was the engineer for the city of Richmond, Virginia. I was a code supervisor for the city of Alexandria, Virginia, again, working for NEMA, and to be blessed to be director of technical services for the world's largest manufacturer of wire and cable, Prysmian. Larger than Southwire, larger than Cero, larger than any other wire and cable manufacturer, Prysmian. I love them. They're great people. They make great products. They make intercontinental products. They make medium voltage, high voltage. I just, blessed to be a part of the team. And I love answering those engineering questions. So anyway, what's up, Poppy? Glad to have you here. Good morning, Frank. And Rob Melting Toast is in the house. Okay, let's get into today's lesson. I'm a little slow here this morning, as usual. I am still under the weather, believe it or not. I tell you what, when you get older, I'll put it that way, older. When you get older, crap is hard to kick. You know what I'm saying? Crap is just hard to kick, colds and crap like that. Oh, by the way, like I said, if you do want to chat and let me ask a question about anything, we can come right here and I'll answer your question. Try my best to answer your question, that type of thing. All right, so Dave brought up a great point, talking about neutral, left off 215, but I said we would be talking about 215. So I want to show you some pieces of what we have to do with all of that, okay? So typically, when you have the neutral and the neutral's coming to the service, we're going to be very much focused on 250.24. So I wanted to go there first to clarify services and neutrals when it comes to services. So I always try to go there to clarify, and we work our way up the channel, okay? So we're working our way up the channel, and for neutral for services, we're going to very much have to do a load calculation, right? We need to imply that it means that we're going to go look at 220.61 for services, okay? We're going to be looking at that. But we're talking feeders today, and we did not do feeders yesterday. So I wasn't able to go through the chain of logic here when it comes to everything about neutrals. What's up, David? Good morning, okay? And I don't like how my thing looks here. Hold on for a second. Bear with me here, guys. I don't like how this thing looks. Hold on here. I want to get a little bit more. Oh, I know why. I'm sorry. Let's turn off the banner. We don't need that banner off on there. That's why I can't see all of the chats this morning. Okay. Good morning, David. Glad to have you here. All right. So let's kind of real quick go to the lesson that we did, and then we'll go to the code. And I want to show you the chain of thought. And again, I know we're talking feeders today, but I want to make sure that I am broad in covering all things since we're going to dabble into the neutral before I do the other feeder panel. Okay, so important for me. All right, so let's go here. All right, so this was the one we did yesterday. If you remember, if those watched the show yesterday, this is one we did yesterday. And again, I had a little bit of a disagreement personally on this largest motor when it comes to the neutral. Why did I have a disagreement? Well, personally, I had a disagreement a little bit on the largest motor application because I did not think that when it came to the neutral right here, that I did not think that was the water pump was the largest motor because that's a 240 volt load. But anyway, it wouldn't have really changed anything. It still ended up being 36 because 35.5 and we rounded to 36. So that little argument over whether or not they picked the largest motor based on the neutral contribution, right? It really was irrelevant in our conversation. So it's 36 amps. So sizing that, okay? Now, we're going to size that. So we're sizing the neutral for the feeder, but in doing so, what we want to do is we want to go back and look at some of the neutral things because I want to make sure that we get that out of the way. For neutral sizing, we'll dabble service, and then we'll round it back down to our neutral requirement, okay? I know that people say, well, that's going to be confusing. I don't care. I don't really care. That's what I'm doing. So I do what I do. All right, so the first things first, we will show you here what David's talking about, okay? Because again, I just want to make sure we're clear. So this is your article for feeders, okay? And you see where it says minimum size and rating, okay? And then you'll see the grounded conductor here, okay? We're doing feeders. So this is what David is talking about. It says the size of the feeders, grounded conductors shall not be smaller than the equipment grounding conductor. You see this is kind of grayed out. So they added that for clarity. Make sure you knew what we're talking about. So it cannot be smaller than the equipment grounding conductor required by 250.122, except that 250.122F, and that is when you're dealing with parallel applications, shall not apply where grounded conductors are run in parallel. Okay, all right. So that type of thing. So again, even in parallel, the grounded conductor cannot be smaller than 1 aught. Okay. All right. Now it says the minimum size shall be specified in 215.2c under the conditions stipulated. Okay. All right. So ampacity relative to service conductors. Okay. Like that. We won't look in that to not complicate things. But what I wanted to talk about is to make sure that you did understand feeder for service requirement calculations first. Okay. I just want to make sure that you understood that. So let's go to 250 really quick. Okay. Okay. So this is grounding at the service supplied alternating current system. And we know that, but I want to get down here and we'll talk about here. So grounded conductors brought to the service. Y'all all know we've talked about how to size this. So I wanted to point this out because it differs. And I get a lot of people that get this confused. When you're going here, you're doing the service grounded conductor. When you're going from the panel down to a remote distribution panel, the feeder, you're going to be in 215. So that was the whole point of me saying today's lessons, we're talking 215. Okay, we're talking those requirements. If you're doing the service neutral, I want you to be aware you're in 250.24, and you're going to ultimately get down to sizing, and it's going to be talking about that in D, 250.24 D, okay? And that's ultimately going to tell you what to do, and it's going to say that minimum sizing and everything like that is ultimately going to fall down to those requirements. And guess what? It's going to ultimately send you to D1. And what does D1 send you to? Remember what I talked about? This is service neutrals. What does D1 send you to? D1 sends you to table 250.102C1. And that is where we have that table, and it can't be smaller than that, but it still has to handle the calculated load. Okay, that is service. And the reason I go do it this way is because of a vast majority of people who will confuse the service neutral with the feeder, even though we know 215 is feeders. So many people are so familiar with just jumping to 225 for outside branch and feeders. They're so used to jumping into a neutral sizing in 250.24, that they forget that we have 215, which is feeder dependent, okay? Feeder dependent application. And again, that's why we know, because a feeder is on the load side of an overcurrent protected device. So it cannot be smaller. Now, manufacturers take care of this for you when you buy the cable. I can promise you the neutral in a cable assembly is, again, like I told you, under UL 854, it is not going to be less than 2 sizes less than the ungrounded conductors. Okay, so typically a 4-aught aluminum is going to have, let's say, 2 4-aughts and 1 2-aught, right? And then I'll have an equipment ground that's a minimum size based on the UL 854 standard, which typically corresponds to 250.122. Okay, but we have to be careful because we do know there is rules in there, remember, that allow us to go to the next standard size overcurrent device. And so this stock cable that you may buy may not have an equipment grounded conductor sized based on the stepped up overcurrent device. So you do need to be careful in what you're doing. This is very common when you're going and buying things from Lowe's and Home Depots, and they sell you a 2-gauge SER and it's 90 amps, and you're going to end up terminating that on a 100 amp overcurrent device, and you're like, dude, I'm good. No, because they do make a standard 90 amp overcurrent device, so that's what you'd use. So again, don't believe what the people tell you in the big box stores. Make sure you double check. Don't listen to what the man in orange says all the time, okay? All right, or woman in orange, okay? Okay, so taking us back to our lesson. So in this scenario, since we determined yesterday that this was going to be a 125, then our equipment ground, or our neutral, cannot be less than the size that would be required to be what? The equipment grounded conductor. Now, like I told you, in a cable assembly, it's probably going to be larger than that, okay? All right, so now our load here was only 36 amps, okay? So at any rate, what we're going to do is let's go over to the code really quickly so we can finish this one off, and then y'all know how to do that. Let's go back over here and let's just see. So we said it was a 125 is what it was yesterday. That was what our feeder protection was. All right, and let's see here. So we're going to go to 250, 122 because of the rules in 215. That's what it told us to do, as David pointed out. And so we're here in this requirement, and so we're going to go down to the table. Here we go. So, okay, so we don't have a 125. So y'all all know that means you got to use the 200 sizing. Okay, y'all know how that works, right? I mean, I'm sure you all do by now. But when you see the table like that, and there's a gap in there, then you go to the next size overcurrent protected device in using 250.122. What's up, Petey? Good morning. Samantha L., good morning. Let's see here. I know I still got some shout outs here that I forgot. Hold on here. I know I do. What's up, Usul? I see you there. You missed coffee hour for some days studying. No problem. Glad to have you back. Let's see. Call the cops and got, well, hey, I try to stay away from the cops. So again, all blessings to you. Hopefully you get it all worked out. Get it all worked out. All right. Good morning, Samantha. Glad to have you here. It's been a while. Been a while since I've seen you, I think. All right. Is it good? Good morning, Angel. I'm doing good, my friend. Hopefully you are as well. So in this case, it would be a 6 copper. You see that right there? So it would not, or it would be a 4 aluminum. So the neutral cannot be less than a 6 copper. Now, by the way, if we go back and look at the ampacity, because we did a load calculation, right? If we go back and look at 31016 for that neutral, right? If we just go look at it, let's just go look at 31016 real quick. Pop this down. So let's see, the 6 is good for 55 amps, even under the 60 degree. Okay. Even though, to be honest with you, even though in all probability, the lug is probably rated 75, terminations are rated 75, the insulation on this conductor is probably rated 75, so you're probably going to be in a 75 column for 65 amps, but the load calculation was 36 amps, I think it was, something like that. What was it? 36 amps. That's a size neutral. Now, again, when you buy the cable assembly, it's already going to be larger. So really nothing to worry about there. So again, but that's how you would size the neutral. And Dave is absolutely right. But I wanted to make sure you understood service sizing. Okay. You're going to be looking at 250.24D for sizing. It's going to send you to 250.102C for minimum size grounded conductor, or the size of the load calculation that's going to be on that net neutral. That's what you do for services. For feeders, we're going to be using 215, and it's going to be based on the size of the equipment grounded conductor, not smaller than that. Okay, now, could it be larger than the 6? Absolutely. If somebody wants it to be, or you buy a cable assembly that already has it larger, absolutely it can be. It could be somebody just wants it to be. That's perfectly fine as well. But that is going to be it can't be smaller than that. Okay, so that's the feeder. So I know I wrapped all that together in one, but that's kind of want to make sure that when I take an opportunity to hammer other lessons home, like service neutral sizing, I like to be able to just pick those pieces up. You know what I'm saying? I just like to. All right, let's go on. So the next one we're going to do, we got a new panel we're looking at today. So we've got a feeder panel B. Okay, so this is a separate feeder panel. Okay, now let's see here. This will be determine the minimum ampacity for the feeder conductors and the rating of the overcurrent device protecting the feeder. So that's what we're going to be doing today. It says we will include in the calculation only the loads that will be supplied from the panel, from this panel board, and will apply appropriate demand factors. So that's all we're doing. We're sizing the feeder conductors to this panel board. That's what we're doing in this one. Note that some demand factors are not permitted because the reduced number of appliances are supplied. The concept of application of demand factor is that all connected loads will not be operating at the same time. The reduced loading of the service or feeder occurs, okay? All right, so we do, and a lot of times, y'all remember, if we're doing a standard calculation, we're gonna get some demand factors on appliances if we have 4 or more. Then we get a 75% demand factor on that. Now, do you have to do that? That's the one question I got from somebody yesterday in an email. If you're doing your service, you're doing a feeder calculation, and you have appliances, and you're like, I don't want to apply the reduction. Well, that's okay. You don't have to. On an exam, you better, okay? Because they assume this is part of the code, and we always want to size to the minimum size we have to have. That's a code. It's a minimum standard. Can you go above and beyond the minimum? Absolutely. But we want to size per code to the minimum. We also remember yesterday that we couldn't use 310.12. Why? Because this panel that we did yesterday was not handling 100% of the loads in the dwelling. So if that's the case, you can't use 310.12, the 83%. You got to use 310.16, right? Same's going to apply here today, because this feeder panel obviously is not handling all of the loads. Why? Because we already did another feeder panel that's handling a portion of the loads. So it just makes sense, okay? Just like to get that all out of the way before we get into this panel's calculating. Now, by the way, this is also a very common installation. Y'all heard me yesterday talk about this issue in Oklahoma where the panels were all in the garage and these home runs were going all over the building, and they didn't take voltage drops into consideration. It's not a requirement, so that electrician didn't. And it came back to bite them in their butt, in my opinion, because I do believe there's an issue with long home runs when it comes to devices like GFCIs and AFCIs, whether the manufacturers want to say it or not. I cannot say 100% because I have not done the testing, but at some point I may do some testing on that and see what happens. I don't know. Depends on how I feel. Okay. I certainly can't do the test with just a reel of 200-foot wire because of the way it's coiled. Then it's going to create magnetic fields and that could play an effect on it. So that wouldn't be a real fair test. So I would have to string it out 250 feet in order to be a real test scenario and then put loads at the end. That sounds like that's something for a Steven 120 or something like that. That is not something for me to do. I don't have the time nor the patience to do that kind of testing. But I wish the manufacturers would say, no, voltage drop's not an issue, or no, the distance is not an issue, or elevated impedance is not an issue. I wish they would just come out and say that. All right, and I have asked. So in case you're asking, I have asked them that question. All right, let's look real quick here. So in this scenario, this panel is supplying different loads than the other panel supplied. Okay, so the area that this panel is supplying is 1,918 square feet. If you go back and look at the one that we did here, it was 1,812 square feet. That was the other panels covering that area, or those rooms. And this one is covering 19,018 square feet. So remember, for the service calculation, if these two panels are the ones that are handling the entire dwelling, the service calculation is going to encompass the total square footage in all of these loads. This is just for the feeder application, okay? All right, so this one's going to cover the kitchen, the living room, the laundry, the rear entry hall, the powder room, a recreation room, and the garage, okay? Now, the first thing that we're going to do as an electrician, you're like, okay, I get it. I'm putting this panel in. First, I have to make sure I have enough spaces to do everything I want to do, right? I got to have enough spaces to do all the stuff that I want to do. So first thing I want to do is make sure that I have enough spaces. How many branch circuits do I need? All right. No, normally these panels, people don't do these types of little mini calculations. Why? Because to be honest with you, usually these panels are like 20 circuit panels. And there's like, I got 2 feeder panels. I ain't going to come close. Okay. Or they're doing something like a 2040 and they're like, hey, I can use tandems and I can get up to 40. I'm not going to go through this. But you need to know how many minimum general use branch circuits do you need, right? So it's simple math. And by the way, these are kind of questions that also appear on exam, just a simple one-step calculation. And it wants to know what's the general use and general lighting and what is the need for the number of branch circuits necessary. What's up, Mike? Glad to have you here. Carlos, I see you in here. Santana, I see you. Terrence, I see you in here. Chad, I see you in here. Blessings to you, my friend, as well. So good morning. Glad to have you all in here this morning. So we're going to do that. I need to know how many minimum general use branch circuits do I need. Now, can I have more than that? Absolutely, you can. But there is a certain number that I have to have in order to be able to supply these branch circuits for general use. Now, how many receptacles I put on it, that's up to me. Okay, there is no 180 VA per strap when it comes to residential. Okay, that is, if you want to use it as a general rule, you do you, boo. But at the end of the day, that's commercial. That has nothing to do with the residential application. Okay, the 3 VA per square foot is going to cover all those general use lighting and general use receptacles. Okay, all right. So, what's up, Francis from Jersey? Welcome in the house. All right. So in this case, it was 1,918 square feet. Of course, it's 3 VA per square foot for the general lighting load in this area. So that is 5,754. Don't trust me. Don't trust me. Y'all know how I like to throw little wonky things in here. So let's do 190 times 3, and that is 5,754. That is correct. So we are correct there. All right. So the number of branch circuits we need is 5,754 divided by 120. Okay, because these are 120 volt branch circuits. So, and that equals 48 amps. Now, 48 amps, how many 15 amp circuits do we need? Well, if we're going to run 15, and remember, this is nothing to do with the small appliances and things like that, right? This has to do with the minimum number of general use that I need. Okay, so 48 amps divided by 15, that means I need 4 15 amp branch circuits. Okay, so we'll check the math. 48 divided by 15. And as 3.2, you can't have 0.2 of a circuit, folks. Okay, so if it says I have to have a certain number of branch circuits, I'm not sure what a 0.2 of a branch circuit is. So I got to round this up. This has nothing to do with the ampacity rounding that we do, 0.5 or greater. Has nothing to do with that. This is sheer the fact that I need a branch circuit. I can't have 3.2 branch circuits. Branch circuits are whole numbers. So I have to jump up. I can't jump to 3 because it said I needed 3.2. So I'm going to jump up to 4. So I need 4 15s. Now, if I'm going to run 12 gauge and I want to run general use and lighting and I'm in that camp where I'm like, dude, I never run 14 gauge. I've always run 12. Okay, that's fine. If that's what you want to do for your general use and lighting and you want to wear out your fingers, okay, it's bad enough doing just the kitchen and places like that. But if you want to do everything and make up all those devices, dude, my arthritis, I couldn't imagine doing that. Anyway, you can do you. It's fine. Now, 48 divided by 20 is going to be 2.4. Well, y'all know I can't have 0.4 of a circuit, so I'm going to bump this up to 3. So the difference here is whether or not you're going to have 4 branch circuits for general use and general lighting and divide them evenly, or you're going to have 3. Personally, my preference, I'd rather go to 4 15s, and I'll probably have more than that because to me, it's not about trying to load as many things on the general use on these branch circuits. And I got plenty of space, okay? And 14 gauge is still a little cheaper than 12 gauge, so I'm going to do that and not have an issue. Now, again, remember, they're all protected by an overcurrent protected device. Again, it's all load dependent, depending on what load you have, that type of thing. So that's what we're doing there, okay? All right. Next, and I don't know if I can blow this up a little bit better. I might blow it up a little bit better. That might be a little bit better for you. Hold on. I'm going to lose the folks over on TikTok. Okay. All right, so what's that? So we got that, right? All right, what's next? All right, now we have to remember that we have small appliance branch circuits. So we have to have a number of those as well. So the code tells us we have to have, since we're doing a kitchen here, right? Good morning, Van Man. Glad to have you here. So we need a minimum of 2, right? So we have our 2 small appliance branch circuits. Remember that those are 1500 VA each. Where do we get that? Just like we say in our code in our Fast Tracks program, there's the code reference. I'll highlight it. You go look at the reference. It'll tell you that they're going to be 1500 VA each. Now, what requires the minimum of 2? That's 210.11c. 1, if you go look at it, it says, A, you got to have a minimum of 2 small appliance branch circuits. Can you have more than 2? Absolutely. Is it still going to be 1500 VA for every additional one over 2? Absolutely. But in here, we're following the minimum, so we only need 2. Okay, so that's going to bring us an additional 3000 VA. Okay, now what about that laundry circuit? Okay, so this is just a feeder, and that laundry is going to be supplied by this feeder panel. Okay, so 220.52b, okay, another code reference. That tells us that we're also going to use 1500 VA for the laundry. Okay, all right, so there we go. Also, if you go look into 10.11c, you'll see you have a minimum of 1 laundry branch circuit. Okay, and again, we're talking a dwelling, we're talking feeder. We're not talking about a multifamily dwelling where they may have laundry facilities on site for every tenant. Then you can get away with not having the laundry circuit for that dwelling unit calculation, okay, because the receptacle wouldn't be required. Why? Because they don't have a laundry. It's done by the premise. It's supplied to everybody. Those are little nuances in the code, okay? All right. Now, if you're doing a dwelling unit in a multifamily building and you add a laundry circuit into that dwelling unit, then you have to account for it, but may not be required. You have to understand how the code works to get that. That's a multifamily dwelling. That is not what we're doing today. We're doing a single family dwelling with a feeder calculation. Okay. All right. So what is the general lighting, which we just saw was, let's see here, 5,754, right? Remember what we did yesterday. And then we had the 3,000 for the small appliance. Then we had the 1,500 for the laundry. And remember, this 3,000 is because there's 2 1,500 VA each for the kitchen, right? So the general lighting, you add these 2 together, it should be 10,254, okay? So never trust the math. Let's go on and do it together. So 5,754 plus 3,000 plus, let's see, plus 1,500. That is 10,254. So they got it right. So this is, hold on, I'll pump it up. This is correct, right? So we're good to go so far. That's your small appliance load. And adding all that together, that includes the general lighting and the small appliance. Okay, there we go. Now, just like we did yesterday, just like this panel, everything that we could do to a service, for example, we can also do to the feeder panel, okay? So we're allowed to apply these demands in table 220.45, right? And that says what? That says that the first 3,000 of this load calculation is at 100%. So you take 3,000 right off the top and put it to the side. It's kind of like a Lego blocks, right? Take that block, Lego block, that red Lego block, put it to the side. What's remaining? All right. Well, at the remaining up to 117,000 VA, you're going to take it at 35%, right? All right. So in this case, I take that remaining minus the 3,000 from it. Okay. And then, so I take that 3,000 from it because I set that red block to the side, right? To the side. And then the remaining is 7,254, and I take that at 35%. So if you do let's do the math. Okay, 7,254. And you do that times 0.35. That's going to give me 2,538.9. Okay, so I'm going to round this to 2,539. So that's what we got right here. Okay, so the net, okay, not the gross. The gross was the sum of all, okay, or the connected load was the sum of all. We calculated it out, and now we have what's called the calculated load. Now, you notice that this says calculated lighting load. Remember, the code allows us to do the general use receptacles as well as the general lighting, all part of that 3 VA per square foot, okay? So if I add an extra receptacle in a hallway, let's say, I would not have to change anything. It's still encompassed in that 3 VA. What if I want to add a couple extra receptacles in a bedroom or in a living room? Don't have to add any more VA to that. It's all covered in the allowance for the 3 VA per square foot. A lot of people get confused with that. They go, oh, no, above code, you have to do 180 VA per receptacle. That is not true. So whoever's telling people that, they are misleading people. And so that is not correct. That 3 VA is very encompassing, okay? All right. Well, let's see. Chad had a question here. Let's see here, Chad, if I can answer. Why do we use 1500 VA circuits, but we need 20 amp circuits in the kitchen? Just curious. I did just what the code says. I don't know. So if I were to take the divided by 20, hold on here. Let's see here. Let's do. Hold on here. Let's see here. Let's do 1,500 divided by 20. Yeah, I to be honest with you, it's part of, it's just what the code says. So I'm not a historian. I don't really go back and care about the why. Once it got into the code, I'm going to pretty much assume that they got that covered. Let's see here. If I do 20 times 20, it's 2,400 if you do it, use Ohm's law and you have the 20 amp. But I'm assuming that in the kitchen, again, because of mutual use, but that's just the way the code is, 1,500. So again, maybe somebody knows out there. I am not a historian. That might be a good question for TradeHog. Maybe TradeHog knows, okay? I don't know. Let's see here. Let's copy the comment. And that gives us a good opportunity to try out TradeHog. Maybe TradeHog knows. I never really thought of it. To be honest with you, I've never really given it much of a, I don't know, that I've been concerned about it. So let's see here. Let's do this instead. This is not working. Okay. Now I probably screwed up my other screens, so bear with me. So let's go down here and post this question in TradeHog. Let's ask. Let's get rid of your name. We don't need that. And let's see what TradeHog says. I don't know if y'all can see that. This is TradeHog, by the way. This is our AI model. So we're going to see what it says. I just follow the code. A lot of people are historians. I'm sure somebody like a Mark Odie knows that type of thing. So let's see here. Let's see what let's see what the hog says. The residential code requires small appliance branch circuits to be rated 20 amperes. This requirement is specified in the NEC. Okay, there's the code references, so we got it. At least 2, okay. The reference to 1,500 typically refers to the general light calculation for small appliance circuits according to blah, blah, blah. We already know that. It says it's used in the for load calculation purposes to ensure that the electrical surface is adequately sized to handle the specific demand from the circuits. In summary, a 20 amp assures that the circuit can handle the higher power demands of kitchen appliances, while the 1,500 VA figure is used to calculate the total load on the electrical service. Okay, so my understanding, my belief in that, let me get back to the code so we have that, so I want to make sure I don't lose that. My understanding, if I had to do a logical guess here, Chad, was because we're allowed diversity, whereas the branch circuit, we're going to calculate for the branch circuit, we're going to use the full amount, right? We're going to use the 20 amp at 120, 2,400, and we're going to use that for sizing the branch circuit. I'm assuming just like everything else, that a calculation was submitted and it determined that because of diversity, they're going to use a value of 1,500 per. And again, based on diversity, because that's what we're doing in the load calculation is taking diversity. I will tell you that same value, 1,500, is used for the optional method as well. So let's assume that when that was submitted, it was based on calculations and diversity and usage of those circuits. And again, I guess most of the time we're working on those circuits, you're not going to trip the breaker. This is a load calculation, right? A load calc. So you're sizing everything based on 20 amps and the loads you plug in for the branch circuit and the overcurrent device. That's one thing. When it comes to the overall load, you're getting some demand, you're getting some diversity, you're getting some allowances, that type of thing. And so I'm going to assume that's where the 1,500 came from based on some historical allowances for demands. Best I can give you. I don't know. The full real version, I don't know. I wish I did. I wish I knew everything about the history of the NEC, but I don't have the patience nor the time to go back and learn those type of things. But I get it. But, you know, Trade Hog for the win. Trade Hog says it's due to diversity. There you go. Remember, you don't use the 1,500 VA when you're doing the branch circuit. That takes care of itself. You're using the full values, okay? That's why we don't use these load calculations for branch circuit sizing, okay? That type of thing. I don't know if that answers your question. Best I can do. Best I can give you. All right. Let's see here. All right. All right. So that is our general lighting. Oops, let me get back to here. Sorry about that, guys. I have to get back to, let's see. How do I get back to where was here the lesson here? Hold on. Okay. Let's see here. Where's my lesson? Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to have to kill this and let me get back to the lesson. Okay, sorry about that. All right, back at the lesson. I knew I'd hit the wrong button somewhere. Okay, let's see here. All right, so that's our general lighting. Good, we got that taken care of. So now we're gonna move on to these appliances. So here's our appliances. Now remember, in this one, we do have the kitchen. Okay, we do have that, so we'll be bringing in those appliances for the kitchen. All right, so we have, let's see. So what are the list of appliances? We have a dishwasher. Okay, so that is giving us at 9.2 amperes. Y'all know how to do VA, amps times the volts. Okay, so that's that. Don't trust me. Verify. Next is food waste disposer. That is 7.2 amps at 120. Don't trust me. Do the math. See what you get. Then we have a garage door opener. Okay, very much an appliance. Many people overlook, but it is very much an appliance. 5.8 amps, and I assume that's right. And then we have a hood fan microwave oven at 1,500. Okay, so we have those values in there. Okay, so there's a total. So this is what our total should be. I'm gonna highlight that. We'll highlight that and we'll do some red there. All right, so let's make sure these numbers are correct, guys. 9.2 times 120. I'm just gonna check their version here. Okay, that's right. I'm gonna check the second one. Get my math crew out here. Get the trusted Casio. 864, that one's right. I'm going to do this one here, the garage door opener, 5.8 times 120. And it's 696. That is correct. And of course, we don't have to do any math here. They just give you the 1,500 VA for that one. So add all three of these up just to make sure. 1104. Remember, due diligence. 864 plus 696 plus 1,500. And it's 4164. That is correct. So we're good to go. Now, how many appliances do we have? Remember, we get to apply 220.53 if we have 4 more appliances. Remember, what's good for the service is still also good for the feeder panel, okay, if it has the appliances, so we can apply it. So in this case right here is 4164 times 0.75. How many do we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 appliances, 4 or more, 75%. So 4164 times 0.75 is 3,123. I don't trust it, so I'm going to do it. 3123, that is correct. So there's our second value that we're going to be utilizing. So we got our first value, right? Our first value, which was right here. Okay, this is our first value, right? And then we got our second value, which is right here. There we go. So we're writing these down. Okay. All right. What other loads do we have? because we can't add the ovens, we can't add the ranges. Again, it tells us in 220.53 what we can't include. It gives us a specific list of certain appliances that we can't include. For example, EVSE is now in that list in 220.53. And that very much tells you that an EVSE is an appliance. The reason they're adding it here is because they don't want you to add it to. Now, 2020 doesn't say that there, okay? But in 2023, it specifically adds EVSE as saying, hey, do not include this in your appliance demand factor calculation, okay? All right. So now what loads do we have left? All right, we wrote these down. We got all this down. Next, we got the wall-mounted oven and the counter-mounted range, okay? So again, we're resizing this one and we're gonna get, okay. So since we have two of these, okay, separate, we're gonna be using table 220.55. We're gonna be using note 3, right? So what does note 3 say? Well, this gives me a great opportunity to go and look at the calculations and looking at 220.55. Let's do it. So I'm gonna go over and look at it. Nothing like an opportunity for us to do a little looking or maybe a little calculation or doing something. So I'm gonna go to 220.55, click on it. Okay. All right, so here is where we're gonna be using this table. Y'all are familiar, maybe using this table, we don't know yet. But what we do know is we have to come down and look at the notes. And note 3 says if it's over 1 3/4, okay, which ours are, okay, over that. And you say, well, where did it say that? Well, let's go back real quick and look. So our wall-mounted oven is 7450, right? And then our counter-mounted range is 6600. Okay, so both of those are over 1750, which is 1 3/4. Okay, so they're over that, but they're also not over 8 3/4. So they both meet note 3, and they're two separate appliances. Okay, two separate things. All right, so let's go look here. So let's go over back to the NEC. All right, so what does note 3 tell us? It says, okay, if they're over 1 3/4 through 8 3/4 kW, and the answer to that is they both are. We just saw that. Okay, one is 7,450, one is 6,600, so definitely over. Okay, but not over 8 3/4. Right there in that nice sweet spot. It says, now, it says in lieu of method C, okay? It says in lieu of method C, it says adding the nameplate ratings of all household cooking appliances rated more than 1 3/4, but not more than 8 3/4, okay? And multiplying the sum, okay, by the demand factor specified in column A or column B, okay? Now, it says, for a given number of appliances shall be permitted. So that's a permissive rule, folks. If you want to take, for whatever reason, in the real world, if you want to take the full value and not apply any of these demands, can you do that? Well, sure shitting you can. Don't know why you'd want to. It could result in a larger feeder than you need it to be, but that's your prerogative. It's your job. But it means you may be charging your customer for larger cables than necessary. And again, you do you, boo. But when it comes to an exam, it's the best possible answer. So it's going to be the lowest possible answer. Okay, so you're going to have to do some comparisons here. Okay, all right, let's go back. All right, and it also says where the ratings of the cooking appliances fall under both column A and B. So one falls under A and one may fall under B, that scenario. Okay, well, then you solve A and then you solve the one that falls under B and you add them together. Okay, it's not brain surgery, right? Pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, and it says the demand factors for each column shall be applied to the appliance for that specific column. And then again, the results are added together. Okay? Easy, easy peasy. All right, okay, so the first one, by the way, just so we know, let's go back up to this table and I'll pop this out. I don't know how well this will show on the screen, and we'll move back and forth. But obviously this one is less than 3.5 kW. Okay, so that's obviously that one's not going to be applicable to us. So we go to the right And it looks like column B is applicable. Okay. So right there is 3.5 kW through 8 3/4. So we're definitely in this column right here. Okay. Now, just so we can follow this, you do have column C. Now remember what it said in lieu of column C? You remember when it said that in the language? That is a fancy way of saying in lieu of means that you always use C, right? Always use C, but you know what? If your cooking appliances happen to fall under column A or B, we'll let you use that in comparison. And if it happens to yield a lower result, guess what? Ignore column C and use whatever the result is, okay? Now, there are occasions where column C may be less than the math that you would do in column B or column A. So you would use whichever is the lesser of the two. But that in lieu language means that I can do this in lieu of or instead of using that. And you take whichever yields the best result. Now, this is rare for the code because usually the code wants to take whichever the larger is. So this is one of those ones that you got to remember that this one allows you to take the lesser of the two, as opposed to when we do a calculation where we're doing AC versus heat, a non-coincidental load. Then it wants you to compare the two and you take the larger, right? Well, for this cooking, you take the lesser. Just remember that, especially if you get on an exam. Okay. All right. So let's go back and look and see what we got to do here. So now one thing I would tell you, let's go in and look at what C would be. So C would be for two appliances, it would be 11 kW. Could you use 11 kW in the real world? You go for it. That's what you want to use. But we need to see if it's going to be less than that, okay, in our application. All right. So let's go and see what that may be. All right. So if I were to go back, let me get rid of and look and see. We're going to use, since we have two appliances and they're all under B, we're going to use the 65%. Now, in our lesson, we just do those individually. It doesn't matter whether you add them together and apply the 65. It really doesn't matter. But in here, they do them separately, okay, and add it up, right? So I want to do this with you, okay? So the first one is this one, 7450. I'm going to take that and do it at 65% because it is column B, okay? So I'm going to do 7. I want to check them. I don't trust them. Times 0.65. And that is 4842.5. Again, we're going to round that to 43. Oh, by the way, the 0.5 rounding is typically for amps. Whether you do it during your calculation or you do it at the end, it's really not going to make a hill of beans in your overall calculation. Okay, so if you want to do it as you go, that's perfectly fine. I have certain people that say, no, I'll keep it at whatever, that 0.5, and then I'll do it at the end. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to change the overall values at all. So it's totally really up to you. All right, so let's go back to the lesson. Oh, we're already there. All right, so that is 40. So that one's fine. And this one is 6,600 at 65%. So I'm going to do this one, 6,600 times 0.65. And that's 4290. So that's correct. Now, you may be saying, hey, what's up, Bill? Another CME CP in the house? Okay. So remember we said you could have used column C, which was 11, right? Well, we're not going to do that because I can tell you, let's see, 4843 plus 4290. That is 9133. That is less than 11. I'm using column B's results, okay? That's what I would be using. So that's why that is here, okay? All right, and so this just right here is just a redundant one. So we'll green that out so you can ignore it. Because so here is what we've got right here, okay? Now, the last one here that we have to take into account is that dryer, okay? Now, in this scenario, we have a dryer in 220.54. Now, our dryer, now it doesn't show it up here, but our dryer, notice it says 5,700 VA. This is important. Let's go look really quick at the dryers. And you're saying, well, Paul, why didn't you just use 5,000, right? Oops. So, let me show you. Because you do use 5,000 watts as a baseline for your clothes dryer, if you have a clothes dryer, by the way, or the nameplate, whichever is larger. Well, our nameplate on our dryer just happens to be 5,700 VA. So I'm not going to use 5,000. it's going to be 5,700. Now, if you're on an exam and they just tell you it's a dryer, then you're going to use a 5,000. Now, if I'm doing an optional method, then I'm going to use the nameplate because you got a bigger demand factor that you're going to get to apply there. First 10,000 at 100 and the remainder at 40. That's an optional method. Here, we're always going to do the standard method unless they state otherwise, so we're doing the standard method. Now, 5,700, that is what's on the nameplate. That's what we're going to use. If there was no nameplate marking in your exam question and it said it was a clothes dryer, then you're going to use 5,000. Okay, they will tell you. If they expect you to use a nameplate, they got to give you the nameplate. Makes sense? Hopefully it does. All right. So that's that. So we add up these together. Now I believe this, let me make sure this doesn't add this in here because this should not be in here because it's only this one and this one and this. Okay, I don't know why this second one's in here. So let me make sure then this total that it doesn't add this in here because it might. And if it is, that is wrong. Okay, and that might be the little Easter egg that I put in here for this one. So let's go here. Let's go 4843. Oops, 4843. Okay, plus 4290 plus 5,700 equals 14,833. So I did not add it in there. Thank goodness. Goodness in there. So this one is just an anomaly. Okay. Usually in a class, I will ask people for the calculated out and they will actually add this in here twice. And then I wait for them and ask them why did, I just wait for the dust to settle and I'll say, look, this is just them talking about it. This has nothing, this does not go in the calculation. Okay. So this should really be blank right here. Okay. Or it should be the total of these two right here, just to kind of give a summary, but it doesn't. So we'll just say whatever. All right, so that's that. So we have all the cooking and everything. So in this scenario, we now need to find the largest motor. All right, so the largest motor we'll be dealing with in here. Let's look back here and see what's the largest motor. So all of our appliances look like they're all 120, right? And it looks like the largest motor that we're dealing with in here is, let's see here, would be the food disposer, not the dishwasher. That's a pure appliance. So we'll be looking at the in-sink waste disposer. So that's 7.2 amps times 120 times the 0.25. All we're trying to do is capture that little 25% of the largest motor that's going to be in this panel, okay? That's all we're looking for, okay? There's no other large motor in here that we're dealing with. That is the largest one right there, okay? This is an appliance. That doesn't count. Let's see here. This is not the largest one here. That doesn't count. So and this is a pure appliance. Even though it may have a motor in it, it's got multiple tasks in it, and it's part of an assembly appliance. Now, one of the things I will tell you is depending on the code when you're taking an exam, you may or may not get the people who wrote the question, and they may argue that because this has a motor in it that turns the dishwasher, the sprayer or whatever motor, they may argue that this is the largest motor. What I can promise you is at the end of the day, you could be nimble enough to add both of them either way if you're looking for an answer, but it's not going to make a hill of beans in your real overall calculation because we're talking basically 200 VA. And 200 VA is what? 200 divided by 120 is basically 1.6 amps. It's not going to be enough. You choose the best possible answer, okay? Again, a coding exam is only as good as somebody who writes it and what they're intending. You know what I'm saying? I typically try to teach it that we're looking for pure motors. Even though it's a waste disposer, its main function is a motor. Okay, it's not a cumulative nameplate rating where I have a motor and a heater mutually in a utilization equipment. So that would fall under appliance. So I try to hunt for something that is the pure motor, has a pure motor function. Okay, a garage door opener, for example, is a pure motor function. So even though that's an appliance, if it was the largest motor, I might go with that because that's a pure motor type of thing. And once you get in the real world, it's going to not mean a hill of beans. You just search for whatever is the largest motor. It's not going to be enough to make a difference. Anyway, okay. So anyway, let's go back where we were. Okay, so we're largest motor. All we're trying to do is capture that 25%. Where do we get that? That is in 220.50, which basically refers you to 430.24 that says, hey, the largest motor in the house, find it and do it at 125%. Okay? Take that 25%. That's what we're looking for. Well, it was already figured, for example, that was already figured in here in the appliance calculation. So that took it at 100%, even though we applied a demand factor to it because we still originally took it at its face value, right? So that was at 100%. So that's why we're only looking for the 25%. That's what we're doing, that little extra, something. Like I said, in the real world, it's probably not going to make a difference. But if you've ever done a calculation and you were off by an amp or two, that's probably why you forgot to do the largest motor and get that additional 25%, okay? All right, so now let's see what we've got here. So here's our loads. So we've got, let's see. We've got the 5539, okay. We've got the 3123, okay. We got the 14833, okay. And we got that 216, okay. So this is what your total should be right here, okay. So this is our other loads, by the way. So this is what should be what we get from 8, right, and 9. So that should be 14,833 plus the 216. Don't trust me. Look for yourself. 15,049 plus 216. That is 15,265. Okay, so that does not look right. Line 9 and line 8. Okay, so if line 8 was 14,833, maybe my math is wrong here. This is why you have to calculate. Okay. I am not going to be doing a lesson on July 4th. We are taking off. There will be a replay. So if you want to watch something, there will be something there, but I will not be doing it on July 4th. We will not be doing a live coffee hour. All right, so I'm going to double check this math. 833, remember we always leave something in there, and 216. Okay, all right, redid it, and the math is right. Okay, must have been an anomaly on my little Casio here. Where's my math guys out there? Where's Paul? I guess you're up in a lift. You can't do it. So there you go. So that is right. So that's the contribution for these two. So adding them all together. So the calculated load, the net, everything, it should be 23,711. So I'm going to double check that. You do it with me. Okay, so I'm going to do 15,049. Okay, that's this one, which covers this and this. Then I'm going to add plus, I'm going to add 3123 plus, that's this one, right? Then I'm going to add this number plus 5539, 23,711. That's what I got. And that's what this is, 23,711. Cool. So we're good to go there. That is accurate. Put that in blue. All right? Well, blue didn't work. Hold on. Let me see if I can highlight that again. Blue. Blue's not working today. Hold on. Let's highlight another color. Green. There, green. Blue. I don't know. Blue's on strike today. All right. So we take that 23,711 divided by 240. That is the nominal voltage for this panel. So I'm going to double check it. 23,711. We're going to divide it by 240. And that is 98.79. So 98.79. Now, since we're at the end, we'll round that up to Diddy. What do you think happened to Diddy today? I'll give you my opinion if you want it. So that's going to be 99. Okay. So again, we can't use what? We cannot use the 83% allowance. We cannot use that, right? So in our case, we just go to 310.16. We have to find a conductor under the 75 degree. Now you say, why 75? Because we're going to assume that this is going to be using THHN. And SER, for example, is going to be rated 75 for the most part for anything that would be at this amp rating. So the lugs are more than likely 75. The wire inside of it is going to be rated at least 75, or the SCR is going to be rated 75. So we're going to be using the 75 degree column. So if you go to the 75 degree column, you're going to need to have, let's see here. So for 99, now I don't know what this says here. It says the ungrounded conductor supplying panel B could be 2, 3 AWG copper conductor. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. Okay. So we're going to go look and see for ourselves what size we need to handle the 99 amps. I think it might say 2 or 3. So let's go here and see. Oh, by the way, not off topic. If you had an EV charger that was added to this, because this is a question I get from a lot of people. They go, Paul, these little examples are great, but again, I can't cover every possible appliance. But somebody says, well, what if the EV charger is being installed off of this, right? Well, if the EV charger is being installed on this, then I'm going to take 7200 VA or the nameplate, whichever is greater. And I'm going to apply it to this calculation. And it's not going to be able to be anywhere in these demands. You're just going to add that 7200 if that's the minimum. You're going to be adding that to this value right here. Right here. Okay. In addition. Okay. You don't get a demand for that. Right? That type of thing. Okay. Remember, this is the load calculation. All right. So where was I at? Okay. I get sidetracked on a lot. So we're going to go to 3:10:16. And that's why Tino tried to get me off track here. That's Tino for you. All right, so let's go down here and let's go to 3:10:16. All right, so again, we're following the 75, okay, because we're going to assume all lugs are rated as such. All right, and we'll get down here and we're looking for, we have to have 99 amps. All right, so here it says 3. It's good for 100, okay? 3, it's good for 100 amps. Or 2 is good for 115. So I think what it was saying is it could be a 2 or 3, because again, 100 amp rated wire is perfectly okay for, for 99 amps, that type of thing, okay? For this feeder application, all right? Now, a couple things to keep in mind with these calculations, okay, is that when it comes to sizing this feeder, you're okay, Tito. It's all good. When coming to size this feeder, if you did add an EVSE to this for some other reason, I need to remind you of one thing that will affect this conductor's ampacity. Remember, we said it was 99. If you were adding an EVSE to this by chance, then I want to remind you something in 215, because we're doing a feeder. I want to remind you of the minimum sizing. Here, it says for where the feeder supplies continuous loads or any combination of continuous and non-continuous loads, the minimum feeder conductor sizing shall have an ampacity not less than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Okay, so when we're dealing with that EVSE, okay, then we've got to look down. Let's go to 625 if that's what you're adding to the calculation. Go down to 625 real quick. And let's click on 625 right here. And let's get on, down to rating. Okay, so this is a rating of the branch circuit requirement. And let's see here. Let's do, let's see. So all of this is under branch. Okay, let's go here. So I'm talking about the branch circuit. Where are we at? I'm trying to find it. Let's go rating. Let's start right here. Okay, so for the branch circuit, okay, you have minimum sizing, overcurrent protection. Again, all of this, by the way, is the installation stuff here. Okay, and I don't know if I can scroll up and show. Hold on here. I want to make sure I show everything in the installation for this EVSE. Hold on here. I want to get everything in 625. Equipment. Installation. Okay. This is installation. Okay, so the branch circuit has minimum sizing for this. Again, we're not doing EVSE today. But anyway, this is telling you the minimum size for the EVSE branch circuit. Down here is talking overcurrent protection. Again, it says overcurrent protection for the feeder and the branch circuit, ESC included, bidirectional, yada, yada, shall be sized as continuous duty and shall have a current rating of not less than 125% of the maximum load of the equipment. So notice here it says feeder and branch circuit. Why is that important for you folks out there? Well, if I was putting an EVSE on this little panel, this separate panel, and I was at 99 amps, and I'm now adding an EVSE, obviously that's going to push me over 99. I mean, it's obvious. But I have to remember that in this scenario, we have to remember some of the rating, okay? So that's the overcurrent device. So we have to make sure what the overcurrent device is rated for that feeder, okay? But chances are, we have to remember that the feeder that's supplying this panel, which is going to have an EVSE plugged into it, we have to take that into account. It wasn't in our example, but it could be in your example. All right. Also, the rating down here. It says the EVSE shall have sufficient rating to supply the load served. EVSE charging shall be considered to be a continuous load for the purpose of this article. Service and feeder sizing. Okay, watch this. Service and feeders shall be sized in accordance with the product's rating unless the overall rating of the installation can be limited through control use. And then we have some extra stuff down here, which is talking about sizing, okay? So you may have some features built into your EVSE that's going to, maybe you have using it after the service is already in, and this feeder panel is being added later, and because of the limitations on your service, then you put it in here, and you may have some management controls in here that's going to limit the amount of current out to be able to still put it on there, that type of thing, okay? But just remember, any appliance or any load that you add after this, what we just did, that are not covered in our example, you have to account for it. Just don't think that you can add additional motors or additional appliances and not have to count for them. You have to account for them in there. So if they don't fit nice and nifty in anything that allow you to have a deduction, then you remember, put it at the end. Add it to your value before you divide it by the 240 so you can find out what your true amps are, okay? So again, I get people that ask me all the time and say, well, it's not in the list and it's not in the demand factors. It's not covered there. If it's not covered, then I don't have to account for that load. That is not true. Every load that's there, you have to account for. It may fit nice and neat in your calculation formula, and it may not. It may not be applicable to any type of reduction. So you have to do it separate, just like we did for the range, just like we did for the dryer. We might have to do something separate for the EVSE. It just doesn't have any demands that are applied to it. So you take its full value. You get what I'm saying? Okay, I think you get it. All right, let's go back here to the lesson. So I think that's what it means here, is it may be a 2 or 3, depending. Now, for me, it's all about what's available. That type of thing. So, I'm gonna go with what's readily available. I might use a 2 or I might use a 3. Either way. All right. That's copper, by the way, not aluminum. Copper. All right. Let's see here. The minimum ampacity for the neutral to panel B is shown in table 27.2 is 80 amperes, which specifications require that 3 AWG feeder conductors supply panel B, okay? So based on panel B, which is, let's say they chose a 3 copper, then we're going to size that based on that. But we need to see, and the load was 80, okay? So what's a 3 copper good for, okay? Remember, it's got to have a minimum size, right? We saw that earlier. That was brought up by David. Minimum size based on the equipment ground. We can go look at that. But we know that it has to be at least 80 amps because that's what the calculation was for. So let's go look real quick. Well, first, let's go look real quick at the chart. I'll pop this out for you. Okay, this will be hard to see for some of you, so I'll move it around. But let's get down here to where the neutral would be. Okay, so let's see. The neutral is done on this side, by the way, guys. So that didn't change. The neutral load was the same because all these general lighting and general use, they're all 120 volt loads, so you take the full neutral value. So that's why that's there. So that's okay. Let's see. When it comes to the appliances, we only take those that have 120 volts. So notice that anything other than that would be out. It's not in here. Only the 120 volt loads. And if you look at it, you'll see that basically that was all of them, that 4164. And we're able to apply the 75% to the neutral as well, just like we did the hot, because we do have 4 more appliances. So that's where we got the 3123. So that didn't change. Now, when it comes to the wall-mounted oven, counter-mounted, and the dryer, remember what it says in 220.61, it says that we can take an additional demand factor of 70%. So that's a no-brainer. So we already did the calculation. Remember, these were at 65%, right? But the neutral is actually 70% of that, another demand. So I take this value right here. So let's do this. I'm going to take neutral of the original value. This is the original value, 7450, 7450. And I'm going to do the math. Oops. And I'm going to use whatever the value was here. So bear with me. Let's do 4843 times 0.70. Okay. So we're going to be using 70% of this value right here, because this was what we ended up with, right? After the 65. So 70% of that, let's do the math to double check. 4843 times 0.70 is 3390.1. Okay, 3390.1. We're going to drop the 0.1. So that's where we get the 3390 for the neutral contribution. That's for, I don't know which one that was for. What is that for? That's for the oven. And then the same thing here. We use the value that we used in our calculation, which was the one that was 65%, remember? And so we do the 4290 times 0.70, and that is the 3003, so that's where that came from. And then the same thing with the dryer. We use the 5700 times 0.70, and that is 3,990, and that's where that came from. And then we use the full 216. Why? Because that was for the garbage disposer, and that was a 120 volt load. Since we're doing neutrals, we need the largest motor that is neutral connected to it. So that's why we're going to use that 216 for that, right? And then we've got the subtotal. So we have to add all these up, right? So we're going to add up the 50. Let's add them up. Let's make sure they were right. 5539 plus the 3123 plus the 3123 plus the 10,059, 10,599 equals 19,261. Okay, so that is different than what this load was. This is what our ungrounded conductors were based on. And this is what our grounded conductor is based on. So 80 amps. Okay, 19,261 divided by 240. Let's do that. And that is 80.25. We can drop the 0.25. We are working with amps. So 220.5 is going to allow me to drop the 0.25. So we're working with 80 amps. Okay, so just wanted to make sure we covered that. So let's go back now to the code. And we're going to remember what that conductor size we need. So we're going to go to 31016 first, just to see sizing wise. And then we'll go double check that to make sure we got the minimum size, because it can't be smaller than the equipment ground. Okay, so let's see, where am I at? 31016. Remember, we like to be thorough. Even if we run over, we like to be thorough. And I am over. Okay. Why didn't it go? All right, there we go. So here's our ampacity table. Let's go up here and pull. Okay, so now people will say, well, why don't you fall under the 60? Because it is less than 100 amps and you're in 110.14C1. Well, the reason we don't do this, because I told you we're using SCR cable, and the ampacity was going to be using 100 amps, right? In our case, we used 115 because they selected to use the 3-gauge copper. So in that scenario, that tells you that all the terminals are probably going to be rated 75 degree, okay? And so the inner conductors are going to be THHN, THWN-2, dual rated. So we're going to fall under the 75. And typically, whatever the type of insulated conductors you get for the ungrounded conductor is going to be exactly the same for the grounded conductor. Okay. All right. So we're going to come down here. We need one that's good for 80. All right. So, and this one says, well, let's see here. Under copper, let's see, a 3 is good for 100. Okay. 100. But a 4 is good for 85. So you're saying, dude, I should be able to use 4. Right. So just remember those two. A 4, 85, and a 3 for 100. Okay, so just kind of remember those numbers, whatever you can. Okay, now in our case, The specifications, probably from the design professional, required it to be 3. But typically the neutral is not going to be what? It's not going to be more than 2 sizes smaller anyway from the ungrounded hot conductors, okay? So in our case, if it was 3 copper, then by the way, if it's 3 copper, then it couldn't be smaller than 6, okay? Couldn't be smaller than 6, but 6 is only good for 65 amps, okay? That type of scenario. So keep all that good thought in mind. So now we're going to go look and see the equipment ground size, just for craps and giggles. And we're going to go here, and I'm just going to go to 251.22, because that's where it ended up. 215 ends up sending us anyway. So we're just going to skip that step, and we're going to go, because I am running over as usual. And again, in our case, looking at the enclosure panel, and hold on here, my other one's stalling up for me here real quick. Daggone it. Why is it doing that? I don't know why this thing is stalling. I want to take you back to the other one. I don't know if it'll let me go back. No, probably not gonna let me go back. Okay, that's good. We don't need to. All right, so let's go down to the table. Okay, so in our case, we had 99 amps, right? And if we're gonna put the 99 amps on a 100 amp overcurrent protected device, let's say, that's what we chose to do, right? So it's a 100 amp remote distribution, 100 amp feeder. Then it can't be smaller than an 8, okay? But of course, we know that it can't be smaller than that, but it could be larger than that. And that's because we were calculating our load, and our load was 80 amperes. Okay, so as long as it's larger than 8. Okay, so in our case, again, the SE cable may already have this all done with it, so you don't have to worry about that. But in our case, we know that it can't be smaller than an 8 copper, but we have to handle the load. So in our case, we're going back to 310/16. And 316, it tells me that I have to handle the load. So it typically would be a 4 gauge, okay? Makes sense? Right? Because that handles the 80 amps. Now, how quickly could that change for you? It can change very quickly if you start adding additional loads at the end. This is just based on the loads that we calculated out, right? And so we'll come back and close on those so you can see what loads that we did. I'll pull this up real quick so you can see it here to the right. So there's all the loads that we dealt with, single phase, 3-wire. No, we can't use 310.12 because this panel is not seeing 100% of the loads. Here you see us work through the whole process. And there's your 99 amps, and you're going to size your conductors in 310.16 based on 99 amps. And again, could have been a 2 copper. That's right at the threshold. And then the neutral size is going to be at least 80 amps. Okay. So this would be important to make sure that when you're sizing your cables, that you have the minimum size. So that's really important thing to take away here, is that sometimes you may have a pre-done cable and it has conductors in it that are rated for, let's say, 100 amps. And ungrounded conductors rated for, but the neutral is permitted by the standard UL 854 to be up to 2 sizes smaller. Well, those 2 sizes smaller may put the neutral undersized for the load. All right? So you have to be careful of that. Usually not so much the case. In this case, it may come into play. But just think about those things when you're selecting your cables. Sometimes off the shelf is not going to be workable for people. I can show you an example of that real quick. Let's go look at Encore Wire real quickly. Take an opportunity to send you over there. Let's see if we go look at Encore Wire here. And let's just go to an SE cable because I want to show you some of these applications. So let's scroll down. So let's see, we're going to go down. We're going to look at SER. So right here, by the way, this is my hybrid cable. That's one of my patents. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to the patent. All right, we're going to look here. We're going to look at the spec. Okay. And we're going to look at the spec and I'm going to pull it on the screen. So here's a spec for an SER, by the way. All right. So here it tells you UL 854 right here in case you ever wondered. Okay. In case you guys wondered. And go down. There's what it looks like. Okay. Round, SER, R for round. And look at the sizes. So in our case, here you see that the 222, right? And so that is neutral is 2, 2 hots are 2, right? And then it gets down to the size of the ground wire. And it is a 7 conductor and it's gauge size 4, okay? So in this case right here, this is 2, 3, 4. So again, it's not more than 2 sizes smaller. Okay. Now y'all were saying, okay, so we said we were going to run a 3. Okay, so here's a 3, right? Here's a 3, and it says right here a 5. Okay, odd sizing, but the standard allows for the sizing. Okay, so here's your 3, 3, 3. So this is a neutral is 3. Okay, 3, 3, 3. Right. So that neutral is the same size as the hots. So in the SER cable. So the whole point is when you're using SER cables, many of the manufacturers will make all of the grounded conductor as well as the hots the same size. Then you don't have to worry about anything. So if it's a full size, then it's good for the same 99 amps as the ungrounded conductor was sized for. Let's see here. I got any other examples in there? I could look at some other manufacturers, but let's see. Nope, no other ones that I care to look at. Oh, might as well also look at this because I know somebody's going to ask. Let's go back to the NEC real quick here, right? And you're saying, well, okay, EGC, and that's something that we do inside of, from the manufacturer standpoint, we're able to do some sizing. Let's see here if we can't go to, what else do I want to go to? I'm not sure where else I want to go to. For the EGC, let's see here. Let's go to 251.22 again. All right, for that SE cable that we had, right? Here we got some sizing, okay? Type of thing. So this was copper again, right? So the different sizing requirements. And I'm going to tell you that I'd have to go check because I think that 5 is a misprint and that it shouldn't be 5 for that one. I think that was a weird anomaly or something like that. I don't know that I agree with that. So I'm going to, obviously my job is to check those things. So I will go check and see what the standard says, the 854. And it gives me another thing to do today, okay? But I think you get the point of how you do this, that typically, and that was the equipment ground, by the way. I think you get to see how the grounded conductor is sized and what parameters that we have to follow, okay? But this was that workout sheet that we just did right here, okay? That's the whole sheet that we just did. And I'm not sure how I was able to make this full screen, guys. I don't know how I did it. But in the future, I will be able to do it. I don't know how I did it, but there you go. So here you can see everything that we worked out on this form, right? It shows you how the neutral correlates, right? Largest motor, there you go. There's our numbers. That was everything. And we worked it out piece by piece. Okay. All right, let's get to some giveaways. Hopefully you got something out of that. If you didn't, and I wasted almost 2 hours of your life, that's fine. Okay, I've been known to waste a lot of people's lives. That's what I'm told anyway. That's what my son says. All right, so let's spin the wheel and do some giveaways for those that have hung in here this long. I still haven't changed it. Ignore this. It's September 30th. Ignore this, please. Okay, dang it. I forgot. That's gonna drive me crazy, folks. So let me Hold on here. Let me fix this while I've got you all right here. Okay. While I've got you all right here, I'm going to fix this freaking thing. I've already kept y'all that long. So might as well just hang with me. September 30th. Okay. Boom. There we go. September 30th, 2025. Okay. Peter, NFC promotion card. So Peter, I'm going to put you down. Peter Labita. Is that right? Okay. NFC card. Those cards are awesome. They're also reprogrammable, by the way. So you can program them if you want. All right. If you win that, good luck. The forms are not available unless you're a fast track student. And Ronald, I think you are. They're inside your course. They're inside the course. When you're working on Unit 8, Unit 11, and Unit 13, they're in the course. You download them right out of the course. They're not available anywhere else. They're in your program. All right. They're embedded in there. There should be a link in there that you click on. All right, let's see here. Red Dog, you are in the drawing for the NFC promo card. All right, so spin again. Good job. I forgot to do the red dog sound. Woohoo! Red dog! You wanted to see drawing yesterday. Today you got in on the coin. Edward Ellis. And those that don't know what we're talking about on those coins are unique. I don't know of anybody that does one, but they're basically coins. They're in their own container. You keep them in your pocket. You share them with pride. A lot of people buy the master to give to the master when they achieve their master license as a gift to remember that. And then a lot of apprentices will get, when they become a journeyman, they order this one and the owner or the master will give one as a gift to their apprentice. Once they achieve that licensure and you keep it in the pocket, it's a good luck coin. It reminds you of a day that you were successful, that type of thing, okay? With that said, we're also going to be introducing a new coin. I should have mentioned this earlier, but let me go on and tell you now. We're going to be introducing a lifted coin, and that is a coin for journeymans and masters that have the specific day that you earned your masters or you earned your journeyman. So it's kind of like a Masonic coin when you're raised from the apprentice to fellow craft to a master. You'll get this coin. It says lifted. We'll be doing the same thing. It's basically for when you make it from apprentice to a journeyman or a journeyman to a master, to celebrate that day, to always remind you when you ascended to the light when it comes to the trade. And that's neat because I know that a lot of people would like to, it's an important day when you become a master electrician or a journeyman electrician. Okay, you can undermine it. People can say whatever they want. To me, the most proudest time of my life was when I became a master electrician. Not going to engineering school, not graduating, barely. Not all of that kind of crap. It's when I became a master. That's when I knew that the learning would begin years ago. And I was a master at 19 years old. And I wish I had a coin that had a space on there that established the day that I was a master. Those are going to be lifted coins. They're going to be available soon on our website. And all you got to do at checkout is let us know when you got your license and that type of thing. And that'll be put on there. Okay. And we're still working on the coin, but it's going to be an excellence coin. So again, these aren't painted on. That is etched in there. It's not wearing off. Okay, so it's just a good memento. You can pass it on. I have one company that buys all of their electricians a coin when they achieve the different levels. Okay, so like for example, this is a CMECP coin. It doesn't have the date when you became a CMECP coin. It just shows you that you're a CMECP member, that type of thing. But these new coins, they're specific to people that want to share that, okay, or have that memento, that type of thing, achievement kind of coin. All right, sorry about that. I forgot to tell everybody about that. I'm always selling, folks. Y'all know that. All right, Ellis, congratulations. Hopefully you get that Ohms coin. first one. All right, Carlos. I didn't explain what new things we added to the wheel, but you're there. So Carlos, you'll be in the drawing for the Electrician Rules Slate coasters. So it's a coaster that has a unique design on it. They're slate round coasters. They're not the cheap, just the slate. They actually have the bumpers underneath as well, so it keeps from marring up your countertop. Put your favorite beverage so the wife doesn't get unhappy. But on it, it's going to say electrician. It's going to have a neat electrician symbol. It's going to be generic for electricians, but it is going to be a giveaway. They'll also be available in the store. But that is one of our latest drawings that will be given away. So the coasters, I'll show you one when we finish the design. Obviously, I'll share one with you. They're going to be awesome. I already can't wait to have them in my house because I stick my damn coffee and drinks on everything. And I've worn out my share of nightstands with the wet drink at night because I got to have a glass of water when I go to bed. It sweats and it causes damage to my the nightstand, right? Well, I got new nightstands now, right? I moved to this new house. So I need a damn coaster. So these are for electricians only. They're going to be cool, and it's going to be a very unique design. Okay, so there you go. I'm excited about those. Jeff is going to spearhead that, and look for those in the next couple weeks. All right. So Carlos, congratulations. You're in the drawing for the coaster giveaway. You'll be, hopefully, maybe you'll be the first to get one. Who knows? All right, one more drawing, folks, and I'm going to cut y'all out of here. Maybe somebody else will get in on the coaster. I think the coaster is going to be cool. I don't need one for this desk because this desk. Paul, you already have a Fast Tracks tube, so let's spin again for you. I know you already have that. You're up on the lift, so I'm sure you're just listening along. So let's see what else we can get for you. Oh, and by the way, these posters will be engraved. Okay, so they're not going to be just a painting on it. They're going to be etched down into the slate. I'm sure y'all have seen that before. All right, so again, Trade Hog. All right, Paul, you're in the drawing for Trade Hog, okay, for the basic plan. Which, by the way, folks, they are available now on annual membership. Save you a little money, and you pay one time. You ain't got to worry about this reoccurring, going into your account, that kind of thing. All right, folks, that's it. We talked about a lot today. I was all over the place. We talked about feeders. We talked about neutral calculations. We talked about what happens if you have to add another load to a calculation and it's not covered niftily in all these demands. Then it just means you don't apply a demand. You just add it to the overall VA and then divide it by the 240 and size accordingly. It also talked about the fact that if you do have other loads, you do have to account for them. So you can't just dismiss them, right? What else did we talk about? Sizing. Obviously, you can't use 310.12 on these, the 83% rule. You have to size it based on, one, the calculation. We did that. And two, based on the neutral, whatever the calculated load was for the neutral, but it could not be smaller than what is in based on the equipment grounding conductor in 250.122 based on the reference in 215. Okay, so we've got that requirement. What else? What else did we cover today? Just all kinds of stuff. We even talked about how to do two separate appliances for the cooking. Okay, I don't know if you captured that, but we talked about how to do that as well in this calculation. So we covered a lot of stuff today. Hopefully you got something out of it. We'll catch you tomorrow on a coffee hour. Remember, we will not be here for Friday, which is going to be the 4th of July, a long 4th of July weekend. Hopefully you'll spend it all with your families. And everything like that, and enjoy life. Life is short. Enjoy it. And remember, one of the greatest achievements that you can have in life is educational enrichment. Learn, learn, learn. Never think you know it all. Constantly keep learning all the time. I learn something new every day. I even look at all of our calculations to see if I can find errors because it's so easy to happen. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. And even AI makes mistakes, right? Because it's pulling information. It was created by humans. Think about that for a second. All right, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. And we'll catch you again on another coffee hour tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Till then, take care. God bless. Stay safe.